Acaraya, the body of an ordinary living being, is fully dependent on the material elements. So that dvipala, in this body, we are subject to material happiness and distress, which result from karma. Trimula, having three roots, the three modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, upon which the body is created. Chaturasa, four rasas or tastes. Panchavidha, consisting of five senses for acquiring knowledge. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch. Sat Atma, six circumstances. Lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger and thirst. Saptatak, having seven coverings. Skin, blood, muscle, fat, bone, marrow, and semen. Astavitapa, 8 branches, the 5 gross elements. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And also the mind, intelligence, and ego. Navaaksha, 9 holes. Dasha Chadi, 10 kinds of life air, resembling the leaves of a tree. Dvikaga, 2 birds, the individual soul and the supersoul. He, indeed, Adivriksha, this is the original tree or construction of the material body, whether individual or universal. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The body, the total body and the individual body are of the same composition, may figuratively be called the original tree. From this tree, which fully depends on the ground of material nature, come 2 kinds of fruit: the enjoyment of happiness and the suffering of distress. The cause of the tree forming its 3 roots is association with the 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. The fruits of bodily happiness have 4 tastes: religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, which are experienced through 5 senses for acquiring knowledge in the midst of 6 circumstances: lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger, and thirst. The 7 layers of bark covering the tree are skin, blood, muscle, fat, bone, marrow, and semen. And the 8 branches of the tree are the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. The tree of the body has 9 hollows: the eyes, the ears, the nostrils, the mouth, the rectum, and the genitals, and 10 leaves, the 10 airs passing through the body. In this tree of the body there are 2 birds. One is the individual soul, and the other is the supersoul. Purport. This material world is composed of 5 principal elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, all of which are emanations from Krishna. Although materialistic scientists may accept these 5 primary elements as the cause of the material manifestation, these elements in their gross and subtle states are produced by Krishna. whose marginal potency also produces the living entities working within this material world. The 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita clearly states that the entire cosmic manifestation is a combination of two of Krishna's energies, the superior energy and the inferior energy. The living entities are the superior energy, and the inanimate material elements are his inferior energy. In the dormant stage, everything rests in Krishna. Material scientists cannot give such a thorough analysis of the material structure of the body. The analysis of the material scientists concerns itself only with inanimate matter. But this is inadequate because the living entity is completely separate from the material bodily structure. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Apariyami tastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Besides this inferior nature, O mighty Arjuna, there is a superior energy of mind, which consists of all the living entities who are struggling with material nature and are sustaining the universe. Although the material elements emanate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, they are separated elements and are sustained by the living elements. As indicated by the word dvikaga, the living elements within the body resemble two birds in a tree. Ka means sky, and ga means one who flies. Thus the word dvikaga refers to birds. In the tree of the body there are two birds, or two living elements, and they are always different. In the Bhagavad Gita 13.3, the Lord says, Chetragyam chapimam vidhi sarvakshetreshu bharata. O scion of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. The Chetragya, the owner of the body, is also called the Kaga, the living entity. Within the body there are two such Chetragyas, the individual soul and the supersoul. The individual soul is the owner of his individual body, but the supersoul is present within the body of all living entities. Such a thorough analysis and understanding of the bodily structure cannot be obtained anywhere but in the Vedic literature. When two birds enter a tree, one may foolishly think that the birds become one or merge with the tree, but actually they do not. Rather, each bird keeps its individual identity. Similarly, the individual soul and the supersoul do not become one, nor do they merge with matter. The living entity lives close to matter, but this does not mean that he merges or mixes with it. Asango hyayam purusha. Other material scientists mistakenly see the organic and inorganic, or animate and inanimate, to be mixed. Vedic knowledge has been kept imprisoned or concealed, but every human being needs to understand it in truth. The modern civilization of ignorance is simply engaged in analyzing the body, and thus people come to the erroneous conclusion that the living force within the body is generated under certain material conditions. People have no information of the soul, but this verse gives the perfect explanation that there are two living forces, dvikaga, the individual soul and the supersoul. The supersoul is present in everybody, Ishvara sarva bhutanam pradeshe arjuna tishtati, whereas the individual soul is situated only in his own body, dehi, and is transmigrating from one body to another. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chaksharan Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripasindhupa Evacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna devotees, thank you for joining us. We ask for all the blessings of the devotees here. We can take a look at this nice verse. This is the second of the prayers offered by the demigods to Lord Sri Krishna in the womb of Devaki. Yesterday we were celebrating Mother's Day, And here we have Devaki, who is the mother of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. She has received the Lord through the mind of her husband Vasudeva. It's explained that Vasudeva received the mercy of Krishna, who appeared within him, within his consciousness. Therefore, the pure consciousness is called Vasudeva. Prabhupada makes that analogy. So he became effulgent. He was so bright and brilliant that it said hardly anyone could look at him. Even Kamsa, what to speak of other living entities, they couldn't see him. It's mentioned like that. Could hardly, it was because the all-pervading, all-supreme absolute truth had incarnated within his consciousness. Then he transferred that realization to the mind of Devaki, and the Supreme Lord is now, it's mentioned in the Ishopanishad that he is apapavidham, and he's prophylactic. What are those two words? Do you remember? Shuddha, yeah. So he's pure no matter where he is. It may seem like he's in the womb of someone, but he remains completely transcendental. And the womb of Mother Devaki is also transcendental. So the demigods now are approaching in the prison house Mother Devaki, because they see now that effulgence has been transferred to her. Now she's resplendent, and Kamsa is becoming very nervous. He sees, oh my God, she's effulgent like anything. She's brilliant like the sun. She's never looked so beautiful and so much luster before. So he knows this must mean that Vishnu has manifested. And then we hear this description how Kamsa, after seeing this, he became very unfavorably Krishna conscious. Whenever he was eating or sitting or walking, whatever he was doing, he was thinking about Krishna. And it's mentioned by Narada Muni that even through the process of Vaidhi Bhakti, one can't achieve the same absorption that Kamsa achieved through enmity. So this is a subtle indicator that the different relationships that can awaken through the progression of sadhana are much more powerful than those aspired for under the regulative stage of Vaidhi Bhakti. So Kamsa is now in great fear, and the devas are all appearing. Brahma, Shiva, they are privy to this episode. They're fortunate to be in the loop that Krishna is now manifesting. It's interesting because later on we see Brahma himself, he sometimes becomes bewildered by Krishna's activities. Here he's coming and offering prayers to Krishna. But the Lord's pastimes are so inconceivable that even sometimes the demigods become bewildered. So here they begin to offer prayers, and we heard this beautiful first text yesterday. Satyavartam satyaparam tri satyam satyasya yonim nihitam cha satye satyasya satyam rita satya netram satyatmakam tvam sharanam prapana. This is glorifying the truth, the absolute truth. The very first word that they choose to describe the Lord is Satyam. And the whole verse is glorifying this quality of Sat, reality, existence. They say you never deviate from your vow, which is always perfect because whatever you decide is perfectly correct and cannot be stopped by anyone. So what a powerful statement. This one statement can actually solve all of our doubts and fears. Your vow is always perfect because whatever you decide is perfectly correct. We think we know what is good or what is right or what should be, what should not be. But doesn't Krishna know better? I mean, he is the author of this whole material and spiritual universe. He is perfect. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachite Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishti. He's perfect and complete, therefore all the emanations are also perfect and complete. It is simply our lack of vision by which we see imperfection. Something went wrong, something should be changed. No, Krishna is the Upadrashta, Anumanta. He's the controller, he's monitoring, he's making sure everything is going not according to our plan, but to his plan. Maya Dyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. Hetananidya Konteya Jagad Viparivartate. Everything's in control. Sometimes we think this universe, like the driver stepped away from the wheel and everything's going automatically. No, Krishna is there. He's personally, he says, she's working under my direction. Maya is working on, so he's monitoring, controlling. And this relates with the purport because our purport today is describing how those who do not have this devotional qualification, they see the opposite. They see the theory of chance. Prabhupada says, material scientists cannot give such a thorough analysis of the material structure of the body. The analysis of the material scientist concerns itself only with inanimate matter, but this is inadequate because the living entity is completely separate from the material bodily structure. So material scientists, they think, okay, there is no God, or Krishna, or there was a God, but now it's up to us. So they, due to that fundamental misunderstanding, they endeavor to take the position of God, and through their calculations and creations, they try to invest that quality of controllership or proprietorship in this material world. So Prabhupada continues to explain the importance of sharing this Vedic knowledge. The scientists, he says, the modern civilization of ignorance is simply engaged in analyzing the body, and thus people come to the erroneous conclusion that the living force within the body is generated under certain material conditions. So this is their misunderstanding. This is their mistake. We mentioned previously that Krishna is actually the architect of this entire spiritual and material nature. And when one is not fortunate to have devotee association, if not fortunate enough to get the Sukriti, then no matter what they see around them, they're unable to perceive the touch of the Supreme or the hand of God. They simply see Maya, or that which is not. So, Prabhupada says Vedic knowledge has been kept imprisoned or concealed, but every human being needs to understand it in truth. The modern civilization of ignorance is simply engaged in analyzing the body, and thus people come to the erroneous conclusion that the living force within the body is generated under certain material conditions. This is the great downfall of modern society. That people have been so removed from this param satyam, from the absolute truth, that they are considering life is chance or accident. It's quite absurd. And it's gotten to the point where it's a whole phenomenon, it's an obsession. People are obsessed with science. If something can't be quote-unquote scientifically proven, then they can't open their mind to receive anything. So it's actually destroying the population. The majority of people are infected with this atheism because it's said that most of the people are ignorant. There are some people who are pious, there are some people who are very sinful, but the majority of the populace is they're just ignorant, right? They just don't know, and they tend to just accept whatever the majority goes with. They've done experiments that if the majority of people start doing one thing, then most people will just follow that. They're not so thoughtful, they're not so bold that they want to stand out. They just go with whatever the majority. So now that this demoniac theories of creation have entered into mainstream society, the whole society becomes a Varna Sankar, or unwanted population, because they cannot assist, they cannot facilitate, they cannot serve the purpose of the society, of civilization, which is to execute the order of God. So we'll go into that a little deeper a little later, but for now we can just go through the purport a little bit. It's quite a long purport. And this body is being compared to a tree which fully depends on the ground of material nature. This is very similar to what we hear in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There's a great banyan tree which is a reflection of the original tree. And this entire material manifestation is resting on this tree. There's quite an elaborate description here of the different components, as we read in the Sanskrit. So this body can be called the original tree, which depends on material nature. Come two kinds of fruit, the enjoyment of happiness and the suffering of distress. So now the demigods, they've offered the glorification of the Supreme Lord. Now they're describing the nature of the living entity. And this is a very common theme in the prayers that we find in the Bhagavatam. There's a glorification, and there's a supplication, and there may be some asking for some benediction. So we've heard of Krishna's transcendental position. Now we hear what is the nature of the living entities. They're entrapped in this tree, which is, its roots are born of the material nature, goodness, passion, ignorance. And the fruits of bodily happiness have four tastes: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, which are experienced in these 6 different states. It's interesting that these bodily situations are experienced in the 6 circumstances, it said here. These are described as the 6 whips: lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger, and thirst. So these are the unfortunate realities of material existence. Sometimes we like to paint a very euphoric picture of human life. But we hear here, what does it consist of? Lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger, and thirst. This is how we can categorize the human experience, actually, in a more realistic sense. You know, you could say, well, there's also joy, there's also truth, there's also youth, there's also birth, there's also being full, and there's also having your thirst quenched. But that overlooks the greater picture that is temporary. So when we look at it in this way, we understand the whole situation. It's not an eternal satisfaction. It's important to have this pessimism of material existence. Otherwise, we think it's okay here. I don't need to go back to the spiritual world. I can just remain here. This is the definition of Maya, or illusion, trying to exist in the realm of untruth. And so Maya, she creeps into the mind very easily with these thoughts of how I can stay here forever, how I can be happy in this material world, which is described here as being full of these 6 sufferings. So the intelligence is contaminated. The intelligence has to be purified. Therefore, the object of knowledge mentioned in Bhagavad Gita is to see the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Not to see the illusory, quote-unquote, good parts, but actually to see it as it is. This is a miserable condition for the soul, to have to undergo this trauma of material existence. It's not required, it's superfluous. And therefore, this aphorism is given, Asango Hyayam Purusha. The soul is always different from this body. The soul has no contact with the material body. He's always different. But the contaminated consciousness is absorbed in identifying with the illusory existence. The 7 layers are the skin, blood, muscle, fat, bone, marrow. And this is the glory of the human body spelled out for us. Although our contaminated intelligence would have us think otherwise. Wow, the body is so beautiful, it's so attractive. This again has to be dissected to see it for what it is. Skin, blood, muscle, fat, bone, marrow. And then you have the subtle elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And there are these different hollows, different gates of the body also. But then we come to a very beautiful Upanishadic statement here. Dvikago hyadi vriksha. That in this tree there's not one bird, but there's 2 birds. One is the individual soul and the other is the super soul. So this is the mercy of Krishna, that even though we're in this abominable situation and position, and we're covered by all of these different layers, and we're suffering these different states of material existence, that there's 2 birds within this tree. One is the individual soul and the other is the super soul. So Krishna is there with us. This is also described as a sign of his compassion. That Krishna is personally present with us throughout all of the challenges and difficulties and miseries of material life. What friend will do that in the material world? If you reject someone, you leave them, you run away from them time after time after time, hundreds of times, or you strike them, you attack them, you curse them, you blaspheme them, who's going to stay with you? No one's going to stay with you, but Krishna is staying. Therefore Krishna is the Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. He's the best friend. So we can also think of Krishna as the best friend. He's God. But he also says that I'm your friend. He takes a friendly relationship. And this is the beauty of the Vedic presentation, that God is not just someone you follow, you obey. No, he's the most intimate personal relationship, and he has that personal intrinsic relationship with each and every one of us, which is to be discovered via and through the sadhana bhakti. That is our quest. We're on a spiritual quest, not just in an external way, but the real quest is to discover the intrinsic nature of our soul and our eternal relationship with Krishna. This is the highest quest. Any other quest in life devoid of this is simply a distraction. So people are mad after so many distractions. They're going on so many external quests, but they're failing to attend to the most exciting quest of all, which leads one to the spiritual realm. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport that these are both the combination of Krishna's energies. The external elements are Krishna's external energy, and the living entity is his superior energy. He quotes, Apariyamitastvanyam prakritim vidime param Shiva bhuta mahabaho yayidam daryate jagat. The living entities are the superior energy. Prabhupada's defining them here as the living elements. There's the separated elements and the living elements. The living elements is the jiva. As indicated by the word dvikaga, the living elements within the body resemble 2 birds. And as usual, Prabhupada is taking the opportunity to clarify or dismiss the absurd conclusion of monism, that the 2 birds fly into the tree and they become one, they become lost in the tree. No, they don't lose their individuality, and they don't merge. That is the great feature of bhakti, that the devotee chooses to, he retains his identity to exchange mellows. There can be no love if it's one. Love is between two. So then Prabhupada says the living entities live close to matter, but this does not mean that he merges or mixes with it. Although the material scientists mistakenly see the organic and inorganic, or animate and inanimate, to be mixed. So we find ourselves in this day and age in a very, as we were describing, unfortunate position where the masses of ignorant people are being misled. Their potential for spiritual cultivation is being cut down from the very beginning. The inquiry into one's origin or source is what the Vedas describe as atato brahma jigyasa. This is the preliminary quality of the human being, that he can inquire about his origin. This is what separates him from all of the other species. Yet the atheists have induced the mass of people to consider that their origin is simply matter. So that fundamental gift of human life becomes abused. It becomes lost. Because they're teaching, we all have experience. I was in the schools and they're teaching that life comes from matter. They said actually life was an accident. There just happened to be a big group of chemicals, and by chance, life came. Now, unfortunately, at the time, we were too slow or dull to actually think about this proposition. Most of the people, they're not actually examining the validity of this speculation. Okay, once upon a time, there was nothing, and then there was some protoplasmic combination of elements. We don't know how they got there. And then the temperature happened to be exactly the right, and suddenly life arose. Does that make sense? Is that a very intelligent proposition? Is that a very rational idea? But they're teaching these 8th graders, their only concern is how to, get a nice lunch and maybe look at the girl next to them. So from the very early day, they're indoctrinated with this, and it's sitting in the back of their consciousness. So then when they're growing up, as they go through philosophy and life, they have this atheism rooted in their consciousness. They become atheists, not by choice, but because they were indoctrinated in a so-called educational facility. So Prabhupada wanted that we learn how to defeat and expose this, because it's all pervasive in the society. So we have to point out that, no, this is incorrect. People never hear that. All they hear, everyone just accepts it, and they don't think much about it, and so their whole life they go through having that misconception. Therefore, that fundamental opportunity to inquire, well, who am I? Where did I come from? It doesn't get diluted by atheistic so-called science. So it happened that life came, and then because life was an accident to begin with, who we are, what we're doing, it doesn't really matter. You see how bogus this is? You see how polluting this is for millions and billions of human beings on this planet? This becomes the mainstream philosophy. So this inquiry into one's origin, it's not just, it's actually philosophy. This is the beginning of philosophy, to think, who am I? Where did I come from? So if that philosophical question is being answered via a wild, bogus, atheistic speculation, then what can we hope for the benefit of the society? Therefore, we see in Prabhupada's later years, he was very heavily preaching against this science, and that's what is going on here in this purport. Vedic knowledge has been kept imprisoned or concealed, but every human being needs to understand it in truth. The modern civilization of ignorance is simply engaged in analyzing the body, and thus people come to the erroneous conclusion that the living force within the body is generated under certain material conditions. People have no information of the soul. So therefore, who can give the answer? The Vedas can give the actual answer. So we have to present scientifically the Vedic answer, the paradigm, a real conception of life to people.
that no, this is totally illogical. That life was an accident, this entire body, this entire universe. Do you actually believe that? We have to challenge these people because they're not thinking very thoughtfully. They're not thinking critically. I just overheard one student in the classroom. She's like, critical thinking? Like, I'm not into that. So like, people aren't naturally inquisitive about these things. So Prabhupada gave the foundation, and he wanted that devotees and scientists can learn how to defeat these arguments for clearing and spreading the ground, clearing the ground in which people can actually appreciate what we have to offer. Otherwise, they think this is just religion, this is just sentiment, this is just some archaic philosophy. No, this is very fundamental truths of existence and reality. So, aside from that, this whole scientific theory, then it gets into evolution. And now the Darwinian theory of evolution is quite prominent. That through natural selection, we've evolved, which further devalues what we are as a soul, actually. So who is Darwin? You know, in the material eyes, these personalities, they achieve such high position. Think, oh wow, they're such a great people. Or materialists, you know, they worship so many people, Trump, or the movie stars, or the soccer players, or even these bogus people like Darwin. Who is Darwin? He's just a confused mental speculator, probably without any substantial faith or spiritual, you know, spiritual realization. He's just a confused, you know, Western, according to the Vedic standard, he's a Mlecha or Yavana. And now the whole society is worshiping Darwin. Oh, he's a great man. No, he has no touch with reality. So we have to present, this is totally logical. Further, the mathematical, even scientifically now, you can see how far-fetched this theory is. It's not even mathematically possible that the probability that life came from matter is so unrealistic that it's an impossibility, actually. It's a mathematical impossibility. It's not possible. But they're saying, just to break it down a little bit, they're saying that when you have something that is extremely improbable, like 10 to the negative 100 power, that's the probability, approximately. 10 to the negative 91st power, that life just came from matter. A cell was generated through coincidence. The probability is so far-fetched, but they say that when you consider the expanse of time, so much time is there that inevitably this is possible. This could have happened. Again, it's a theory. This whole evolutionary thing is still a theory. But many people say, no, it's a proven scientific fact. No, that's wrong. It's not a proven scientific. And how could they, we know as devotees, they'll never scientifically prove this. This is a bogus speculation. So when they say, but their time is so long, but the time that the scientists attribute to the creation of this universe is about 10 to the maybe negative, it's like 10 to the 40th power or something. But the chance of this improbability is like 10 to the negative 140. So they're saying that whether you look at the time, but the time that's required is less than the time they attribute to the creation of this universe. So even mathematically, it's not a sound theory. It's being, and therefore they're going to so many other theories now, quantum theory, string theory. They'll always be coming up with some theory because that's the nature of the mind, to speculate. But Prabhupada said this knowledge has been imprisoned or concealed, but everyone needs to understand it in truth. So we see Prabhupada's mood here. Also, he's indicating why no one has spread this Vedic knowledge all over the world. Why these Indians, they didn't go out and spread it. They kept it. So Prabhupada had to do the work himself. He said this was the shortcoming of the Vedic culture, that it wasn't spread. So Prabhupada had to do it. And he says every human being needs to understand it in truth. So this is one angle of a very important point that's brought out here in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So I'm sorry for extended discussion on that, but I found it quite important. Also, as preachers, when you go into the preaching field, we should be not content just to retire from an argument that we are not able to. We should be competent enough to defeat any argument that is offered by low intelligence people. Okay, any questions or comments in the last minute or two? Thank you very much.
This is a very nice verse, long, very scientific. And you see the last line, like how Prabhupada, in translation, how we can see that animate and inanimate cannot mix.
Yeah.
Then matter and spirit, that's what, how they cannot mix. Like Srila Prabhupada gave a very nice example that suppose a green tree is there,
right,
and one parrot is sitting there. Okay? So from distance you cannot see. You can see as if they are mixed. But if you go close to the tree, then you can see, that means one bird like a parrot is sitting, whose color is green, and plant, I don't know, whatever, tree is also green. So you cannot distinguish from the far away. Similarly, the soul and super soul, just like they are described as bird, two birds. One is, you said, Upadrashta Manavanta, Prabhupada always said. Upadrashta Manavanta. He is watching what the living entity is doing. How the living entity is very busy to enjoying the fruits of happiness and distress, but he is simply watching. So it's a very nice fact. And also regarding that so-called scientist, Prabhupada, Bhakti Sarup Maharaj, he used to discuss with Srila Prabhupada. Then they say, then when they say that, what something, by chance, something happened by chance, Prabhupada says, kick at their face. What do you mean by chance? Kick at their face. So, very nice, very interesting conversation, morning walk conversation, Prabhupada with devotees.
Thank you.
Nice. And there is a nice verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2.1.2. Srimad Bhagavatam. There it is stated that how that Gruha Medis, that means they cannot see their soul, that means the Atma, I forgot that word.
Yeah, Shrotavya Dinirajendra,
Yeah,
Santi Sastra,
Shrotavya,
Apashatam Atmatatam Griheshu Griha Medinam.
Very nice. So how is that it's where become good?
It says those Shrotavya Dinirajendra, those who are not devotees of the Supreme Lord have many topics. Is that the same? Yeah, they have many topics. Those who are not devotees have many topics for discussion, O Emperor. Being blind to Atma Tattva, science of self-realization, and they remain as Grihamedis. Okay, it's already 8:30. So, last few words.
Hare Krishna, Brother. Thank you very much. My brief comment and question is regarding, you were mentioning atheism. We have to challenge these people. But we see in the scriptures that some of this greatest atheism is those who are practicing theism. Theism essentially, Brahma Samhita describes theism, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Atheism is Ishwara Parama Aham, I am the supreme controller. And we see that Indra, he also thought he was the supreme controller, and that's why he tried to kill the residents of Vrindavan. But one quote I really appreciate, it says that if someone says good things to us, we feel good. If someone says something bad to us, we feel bad. The question is, have we given the remote control of our happiness in the remote control of our happiness in someone else's hands? And so we can see we're controlled by so many things. In this verse, it mentions some of the controllers. It mentions we're controlled by hunger, old age, thirst. We have no control over that. We never hear on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna never says that we're in the middle of the battlefield. Is there a porta potty nearby? I'm controlled by my bowels. We're controlled by so many things. So my question is, what are some, first of all, even if Krishna isn't the supreme controller, there are so many other supreme controllers superior to us. But at the same time, what are some steps we can move forward to give up this atheist mentality and theism? Because that's why people lose a lot of faith in religion, is that there's so many demoniac things going on under the name of religion, whether major or minor. So what are some steps we can move forward to give up this type of atheism, which is almost worse than regular atheism?
I didn't know if you were prompting me to speak.
Go ahead.
Don't laugh so loud, please. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in his Krishna Samhita that the religious system from birth is actually putting the nail in the coffin for a higher enlightenment for the newborn Christian or whatever, because it's constructed by people who are trying to absorb the most energy from the human beings to divert them to materialism, but it's subtle so they don't pick up on it. So like he was saying that atheism and theism are, they're in cahoots. Yeah, because people, they don't have the understanding that they need to see through that.
Well, since we have Bhagavad Dharma, we have Sanatan Dharma. So if we realize the true spiritual path, then we can be an agent to help facilitate others finding their own revelation of the absolute truth. It may be in a different tradition, but unless there's a standard, then they'll remain content with hypocrisy or speculation. So the best thing is that we realize the conclusion of the Vedic system. Then we can expose the shortcomings, or just like Prabhupada would do in the Christian church or in the other traditions, because he has the Vigyan of Dharma. It's very evident what the shortcoming, and he can expose it. Therefore, whether they become devotees of Krishna, at least they get a proper conception of what they should be doing, what the real path is. That's my thought for that.
Prabhupada says when one knows the truth, he knows there's no greater gain.
Yeah.
And then when people from different groups or devotees would ask Srila Prabhupada about different groups, he wouldn't attack the personality. He would just ask about the philosophy and take it down from there. So,
thank you very much.
Way to do it.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.